Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Thunderstruck, our look back at the greatest matches in the career of one Jushin Thunder Liger, as picked by each and every unique standalone guest of this series. And today I'm joined by an expert on the Japanese pro wrestling scene, Perez, if you will. He does the Eastern Lariat podcast and Patreon, along with Striga. He is Dylan Fox, my favorite person from the wonderful state of Tennessee.
Oh, now I'm really flattered that you said that. Even above Ricky Morton?
Even above Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Even above, who else? Who else is from that wonderful, even more than even Jerry the King of Lawler?
Yeah, he's a classic favorite there. Isn't Cody from Chattanooga? He was born there technically. Cody Rhodes.
I think Cody lists himself as a guy is from Atlanta, doesn't he?
Yeah, Marietta, Georgia. Yeah, that's somewhere right. That's right around Chattanooga. So he might or might not be. That's unconfirmed, but he may be a Georgian. That's close enough. That's right by the great state of Tennessee. But it's good to be on here. I was really looking forward to this show for a while, and I have to say, this is a question I have to pose for you, and obviously this won't matter to the listeners, but do you know what the theme song for the show will be? Will it be Liger's theme, or will it be Thunderstruck by AC/DC?
Well, it won't be either of those because they're licensed music, and we here at postwrestling.com do not use licensed music anymore.
Thumbs up, good stuff. Avoiding the legal tactics, not even by 15 seconds. You don't even want to risk anything like that.
Well, my idea for the Cruel Summer show was that we are going to use the Bananarama song of the same name. And it was all set to go. Like I got the first edit of the finished product because Way does all the editing for us over at Post Wrestling for the most part. And then it had the Bananarama song on it. And then they made the decision. They being John Pollock and Wei King. They said we're not going to do any more licensed music. I go okay. That's fine. It's their website. It's not mine. I don't really have that much say. I was a little disappointed, but you know what? The song they picked. This is like fair use, copyright free music that they picked for this song. I forget the name of it. It has a name, but I thought it was perfect. I really liked it. Really grew on me. The theme song for the Cruel Summer.
Okay, I can't wait to hear it. As always, just like with the Cruel Summer, I like the theme for that as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have for Thunderstruck as well, because I listened to every episode of your Cruel Summer series. We talked about them sometimes, some of your various guests you had on, and I'm so looking forward to this show and this series. But most importantly, me being on now that we get to do a match that I picked out myself. I always enjoy that because I was really debating things in terms of what match I should pick. But I think I picked a very good one. Hopefully, I can't wait to hear your opinions on it because actually the one I picked was one of the most polarizing Liger matches I could think of, and that's a big reason why I picked it. So I can't wait to see how this turns out. If we're the same, if we're different, what the listeners think, because we had a good response for our Cruel Summer show that we did. Both one, especially the first one, but hopefully this one can get some good traction for us too.
I think it will. I was actually, funny enough, I was looking at the cage match comments about this particular match, and they're very polarizing. They're like, they range from it's okay, oh, this was amazing, and I saw 1-9 and when I was perusing the cage match comments. But I'll say this: much respect to all the inmates over there, but some of the people on there, I just shake my head sometimes at what they say. They'll pick out some classic Kobashi Misawa match. This wasn't that great. I'm like, what? Okay, it's a matter of opinion, granted, but still, you're not gonna give fucking Misawa and Kobashi a high grade. Whatever, it's okay. Anyways, we're not here to talk about Kenta Kobashi, the various wrestlers from the state of Tennessee, or we're here to talk about Jushin Thunder Liger. And so, my question to you, Dylan, is: you are one of the most knowledgeable people about Japanese professional wrestling, and historically too. You've watched a lot of it from different eras. What does Jushin Thunder Liger mean to you personally as a wrestling fan and a fan of Japanese wrestling?
Obviously, he was one of the first people being an American and having such a long-standing viewership of WCW. He was one of the first Japanese wrestlers I knew, along with Ultimo Dragon, who was in WCW as well. Those two guys were kind of like my entryway to any kind of Japanese wrestling, even as a little kid. So to me, you look at his style, and I before I never ever knew anything about him and who he really was as a wrestler in pro res in Japan. Just to see such a wild outfit to me was just crazy to me to see that. I remember the horns. I used to play with him in his fictional character in WCW versus the World and NWO WCW World Tour and things like that in the 90s as a kid. So to me, it's like as soon as you see the horns, it's like, that's Liger, even though he had a fake name at the time. With others, it would be like, when I saw Great Sasuke the first time, I was like, that's Black Ninja on there. But Liger always stood out to me. And as I grew older and more knowledgeable about Japanese wrestling and learning his stuff, I remember being really into him in terms of the late 90s, actually, when it came to the most known era to me, where he teamed with guys like Kendo Kashin, one of your favorite wrestlers there, El Samurai, which we'll speak more on him later. He had a big feud with Kanemoto, Otani, Takaiwa. Those 6 guys really revolutionized junior heavyweight wrestling to me as a fan, and had some of my favorite matches as well during that era. And to me, right now, watching his entire career, you'd look at stuff like the Noah run. He was one of the leaders of the New Japan versus Noah Juniors feud before, in 2002, 2003. And seeing him now as a legend, I just think he has to be considered one of the most successful and greatest junior heavyweight wrestlers of all time, which for me, I'm someone that really loves junior heavyweight wrestling, even above traditional heavyweights. So to me, he has to be right up there as one of the greatest legends of Japanese wrestling, in my opinion, and also one of the best gimmicks with his entire costume, his outfit. Timeless, great idea, and he really rocked that thing. This is something that could have been a 1 or 2 year deal, but kind of like Mushi King Terry and Noah, when you look at that. But look at it, it's transcended almost 30 years, So the guy is a legend to me, and I love his work and think he's just an amazing legend to me.
Yeah, I will echo your sentiments. For me, it's like my first time seeing him was in WCW against Brian Pillman for the WCW light heavyweight title, and then from there, when I started getting to tape trading myself, and then I'd see his names in the listings for like New Japan tapes, and I was like, oh, I got to get that. Of course, like my full-on love of Jushin Thunder Liger really happened with the Super J Cup '94. An amazing run in that tournament, and from there up until now, like I've always loved Jushin Thunder Liger. He's slowed down a lot recently, but to me, I think you used an amazing word. You used the word transcendent. He is a transcendent figure in professional wrestling. I would say the greatest masked wrestler of all time in Japan, for sure. I won't say, I won't compare it to Lucha, because obviously you have Santo, who's like this legendary figure. Like he crossed so many like pop culture borders in Mexico. But to me, for Japan, and I would say even for America, he is the greatest masked wrestler to have ever lived and worked those two countries.
His legacy is just unreal in both countries, and it doesn't take there's only a few people that can say stuff like that. Someone like Santo, Mil Mascaras, like those guys transcended just Mexico and became a figure elsewhere. Liger did the same thing for Japan. He was kind of the first one, even bigger. And I think the obvious comparison in terms of the masked wrestlers, I don't want to talk like I know for sure, but would you say among Japanese fans, especially old school fans, would they say Liger and Tiger Mask, like Sayama, would be the two legends of that? Would you say those are the two guys in Japan?
I think, what Sayama had for him was that he was such a groundbreaking and revolutionary figure of this type of wrestling that he ushered in, him and Dynamite Kid. Yes. But I think as someone who had longevity and was really responsible for where junior heavyweight wrestling went in terms of its importance, because he booked a lot of the stuff that happened in the New Japan Juniors in the 90s, and it was really good booking. I don't think he gets as much credit as like Riki Choshi does for the booking that occurred in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but I tend to think actually he's in large part a better booker than Choshi. Obviously, the New Japan Juniors don't get the chance to sell out like the Tokyo Dome or Budokan Hall or Sumo Hall, because they rarely headlined it. that was reserved for like the Three Musketeers and Sasaki and Hase, people like that.
And
but
sometimes
if you look at it just from like how many stars he made as a booker in his time, like you bring up like Otani, Kanemoto, Takaiwa, Samurai. He even got people like Akira Honaga, someone you and I were talking about earlier.
Yep.
He got that guy over. He got Kendo Kashin over. He got Eddie Guerrero as Black Tiger over. He got Chris Benoit as Wild Pegasus over. I think like Dean Malenko wouldn't have become as big of a star if it weren't for his run in New Japan as a junior. Like his stuff in All Japan was really good with him and his brother Joe. But I don't think that got him as much notice as being a junior in the New Japan Junior division. Who else would I put in there? First time I ever saw Dr. Wagner Jr. was in New Japan because I wasn't really following Lucha at the time. And he got Dr. Wagner Jr. and Silver King over to the New Japan crowd, which is like amazing because they wasted Silver King in WCW. I felt, and like I wasn't really familiar how big of a star Silver King was in Mexico, but he became a star in Japan because of being, booked in the New Japan Junior division. I think Liger was still booking at that time.
Yeah, I can completely agree with you on all accounts. That run with Dr. Wagner Jr., I'm same as you. Before I even started watching Lucha, I watched him in Japan. And I was like, whoa, this guy is a freaking amazing worker. And the way they used him was perfect. They booked him so strong with Kanemoto and against him in the finals of the Best of the Super Juniors. Got somebody over that, hadn't been around in Japan for a long time when the time he came back. He had it's a very early run in the 90s, like UWA, or Hamada's UWF rather. And things like, to me, another thing that stands out for him, and I think a point that's really important, to me, he's the first junior. Like whenever I talk about, because on my regular show, I always say stuff like, to me, I always lament kind of the junior heavyweight scene in New Japan nowadays, and I feel like it could be treated a lot better and mean a lot more. Because I always think of Liger being kind of, to me, he's the first one that you could be considered. He obviously never got the main event of Tokyo Dome or anything like that, but he did main event a show against Shinya Hashimoto. That was the first time the junior and heavyweight champion went at it, and they had a legendary match in March 1994. That was the first time a junior heavyweight had been at that level, and he was the one that could do it. So to me, he was like the first junior heavyweight true main eventer where you can sell out Sumo Hall for the Super J Cup 2 years in a row and stuff like that. He really felt like he's the one that, again, to use that word we mentioned, he transcended the junior and heavyweight divide to become that top star. Even if he wasn't booked as it necessarily, to the fans, he was one of the top stars of the promotion, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we give a lot of credit to, Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami, and then later on, Keiji Muto, Shinya Hashimoto, and Masahiro Chono, the Three Musketeers, for the success of New Japan in the 90s. But, you can't have a great steak without some, a good side, right? So, to me, the side, for me, personally speaking, the side dish is better than the main course when it comes to New Japan. As much as I love a lot of the heavyweights that existed in New Japan in the 1990s, my favorite era of New Japan pro wrestling as a whole is, I will always say, the 90s, and the junior division in the 90s was one of my favorite things in my entire history of loving Japanese wrestling. I will say 90s All Japan heavyweights and the New Japan junior heavyweights were the two best things happening in wrestling at that time. And what I was watching at the time was oh my God, if I could pick one thing to if I was going to become a promoter, I would either try to steal all the guys from All Japan, in the heavyweight division, not the junior heavyweight division, because that was not that good, or I would do a complete junior heavyweight division promotion, Toryumon or Michinoku Pro, but it wouldn't be Lucha Res. It wouldn't be the hybrid of Pro Res and Lucha Libre. It would be the junior, New Japan strong style, junior style, like Kanemoto, Otani, Liger, Samurai, Wild Pegasus, Black Tiger, Dean Malenko, all that style. That's my favorite style of wrestling besides Royal Road style, King's Road style over in All Japan. And I'm one of those people that was I'm not a big fan of offshoot promotions, 01 or the idea of like taking talent from one company and then splitting it off to another, like, and I like 0-1, I do, but it's just like the concept itself. But if there was one person who I would love to have seen create their own promotion and take all the people that were associated at the time with him, it would have been Jushin Liger. If he created like Pro Wrestling Liger and it was like, and he took the entirety of like, say, from 96 to 99, the junior division of that era in New Japan, and he made his own promotion, I would probably have been like where's that DVD, catalog? I gotta order all these shows. I gotta order all the Noah stuff, all the Toryumon stuff. That's what I would have been ordering if that ever happened. But he was just such an amazing booker, as well as being an amazing wrestler. And I don't think he gets enough credit for being a great eye for talent as well, because I gotta imagine he probably picked a lot of the people that got to work in the junior division at that time.
And you can look at where things fell when he kind of fell off, as booker. When he stopped booking the juniors, it feels like things really fell off, like pretty much after that.
Like just for edification, people, that's like when Choshi took over the booking.
Yeah.
Not only the heavyweights, like he took over the booking of the juniors, and then he just sacrificed all the juniors to like his boys like Sasaki and Nakanishi and
that was a bad time.
And like one of his boys in the junior division was Takaiwa, and I remember he gave the huge push to Takaiwa, which granted, like it's not a bad idea. Takaiwa was an awesome power junior at the time, but it's like he's a compliment to like all the kind of like the high flyers and the kind of like shoot style wrestlers that you had, like someone like Kanemoto, and then later on Minoru Tanaka, who came to the company. But I would definitely push Takaiwa, but I wouldn't make him the top star of the junior division, which is I think what like Choshi was kind of doing with him at that time.
Yeah, that was around the time too. Remember when they put them in the G1 and Liger finished last in his block there, and I was like, come on. And that was when that year they had a 4-block system. It was like 4 blocks of 4, and he still finished last. Imagine now if they did that and Ospreay had finished last in the G1. If that would be terrible. Like, No,
but that's definitely what they would have done with, like, Kushida. Like, Geto would have put Kushida that way. But I wouldn't agree with that at all. I would have been like, you are out of your mind if you're booking Kushida like that. But, Dylan, we should stay on focus. We're getting a lot of great historical perspective on Liger, and that's why you're on the show. But we do have to talk about this.
Let me just say one more thing about that, because there's something I have to air my frustrations out. After that, you brought him up. I didn't want to go there, but you did. When you brought up Minoru Tanaka, then they changed him to Heat, the worst masked character ever, to compare to Jushin Liger, and gave him a 1-year-long title reign, not as himself, the amazing battle arts worker, but as Heat. That's something I will never forgive New Japan for.
Yeah, that was a bad idea. Minoru Tanaka. Let's put this really like popular, good-looking dude who's an awesome wrestler who brings a different style to New Japan, like because he came from battle arts, and let's make him a comic book character. I think it's a licensing agreement they had with another company. I think that's the whole deal with Heat. But very, very bad idea. They should have put it on someone else and not taken away a lot of the appeal of Minoru Tanaka, who is better as a shoot style wrestler than as like what they wanted to be was like the next Sayama or Liger, I think. So wasn't going to happen. But let's talk about the match you picked. This is a very interesting match, like as you were introducing. Please tell the listeners what match you picked, Dylan.
I picked Jushin Liger versus El Samurai from April 30th, 1992, the final match of the, at the time, top of the Super Juniors tournament. This was before they even called it the best of the Super Juniors. This was the finals of that tournament. A star-studded tournament, for sure. I read you off some of the names when we were talking about it. Look at this list of names here. This was in 1992, and at the bottom of the block was Koji Kanemoto, still a young guy at this time. He was just starting. Too Cold Scorpio, they both tied for 2 points. Eddie Guerrero, Fit Finley, Pegasus Kid, Chris Benoit, Negro Casas, one of the best lucha workers of all time. Norio Honaga, he was okay. Jushin Thunder Liger and El Samurai were the last 2 in this tournament. And I was so excited to talk about this. This is kind of, I don't want to say a legendary match, but it kind of is a very famous match for him early in his career, because you have to look at the perspective of Liger. leading into this match. In that, at this point, ever since he had his feud with Sano in 1990, that was another legendary match, one match of the year in Wrestling Observer in 1990. That was at the very start of the year. Ever since then, he faced a lot of mid-carders. It was kind of elevated the group, kind of like Honaga, Akira Nogami, guys who weren't really on that level. And now with El Samurai, you have a new masked guy that obviously works a lot different than him as we would see in this match. But it really felt like finally they were giving Liger somebody that was on his level. Also as a wrestler too, in my opinion. But I really like the dynamic of that you'd have a new guy coming up to be kind of like I don't want to say Bizarro Liger, but a fair rival to him, unlike someone like Honaga and the mid-carders they had with him. Somebody that can really elevate the division with Liger instead of just being Liger and friends he had to put over, pretty much.
Well, let's talk about El Samurai, because he has pretty much disappeared from the scene.
Yeah.
You don't really hear too much about him. So for maybe those listeners who weren't following New Japan in the 90s and aren't that familiar with El Samurai, give us a bit of a brief history about old Sammy there.
El Samurai, to me, I think he's actually very underrated as a worker. To me, when you look at a lot of his career, he always came across a second fiddle to Liger in a lot of ways and hasn't reached that legendary status that he did. And obviously, like Tiger Mask we talked about before. But if you look at his wrestling, I thought he was a very unique talent in terms of the fact that he could work technical style. He could work power style. He did some crazy dives and bumps. To me, one of the most famous matches he ever had was a match that got 5-star rated by Dave Meltzer. It was the finals of the Best of Super Juniors in 1997, 5 years after this, versus Koji Kanemoto, which is one of their best matches. Just the unique styles that he had, because he could dive and do crazy stuff. He could do brawling, like we'll see in this match. He was more of a balanced work. Sometimes he would be more of a babyface. You look at the mask and the attire, you'd think he would be a traditional babyface. But he also worked as a heel complement to Liger, as we would see here again. So I think he's such a unique talent in terms of how varied his style was. Very underrated performer, but also well-known in terms of tag wrestling, along with someone like Liger. I think he's someone that doesn't get enough credit at all. And also, I have to say, first of all, I love the mask with the eye version that he had. And his theme song, which unfortunately he did not come out to at this time, but his later theme song was one of my favorites of the early 90s. So I really liked everything about El Samurai and think he was a great worker, in all honesty.
So I mentioned before, my favorite, eras of wrestling are the 90s heavyweights of All Japan, the New Japan junior heavyweights of the 90s. I actually draw these parallels between, the two rosters. So for me, El Samurai is the Akira Taue of the New Japan Juniors.
Yeah, I could see it.
It's because underrated, but he doesn't have a very impressive physique compared to other people, but he just an amazing worker. Like when I first saw him, I was like, oh, who's this geek, right? And then I saw him wrestle, I'm like, wow, this guy's fucking awesome. So for me, then that Liger would be Misawa, Kanemoto is Kawada, Otani is Kobashi, Samurai is Akira Taue, and I guess Takaiwa, I guess maybe that makes him Jun Akiyama, maybe, of the juniors, if we're going to draw that parallel. And then someone like Wild Pegasus would be the Stan Hansen of the juniors. Eddie Guerrero is I don't know, who would he be? Eddie Guerrero would be the Dr. Death Steve Williams, and then Dean Malenko. Who would Dean Malenko be if he's if we're talking about the All Japan Gaijins at the time?
He'd have to be himself. He was in All Japan too. so
he was All Japan too, but he was as a heavyweight star. Who would he be? He would be I don't know. He teamed with Benoit. Maybe he's when Ted DiBiase would do tours of All Japan. So I think that makes Chris Jericho, when he was working in Japan, that makes Chris Jericho the Johnny Ace of the Japan Juniors.
Okay, yes, he has he had the theme song at the time.
he had the blonde hair, so yes. As Johnny Ace. But yeah, you mentioned the theme. I really liked this theme, that he came out to for this show, because I was this is kind of a banger. Actually, it's kind of a rocking theme.
Yeah, this was a good theme too, but it cannot match "Terrible Gift," which was his later theme. Always one of my favorites. But I never heard him come out to this song before this point, so I really enjoyed that. I liked the song too for what it was. It felt like a Japanese song, but it was like a Japanese rock song. So I really liked that contrast to Jushin Liger, who had it kind of told the story of the match too, because he came out to this rock banger, like you mentioned, and Liger came out to the upbeat and poppy, Ikari no Jushin. So I like the compliments on those songs as well.
So just some more background information. We'll talk about the background, because you're saying that there's a history to this match. First of all, let me just say this match comes from Ryogoku Kokugikan, aka Sumo Hall. There was an attendance of 11,500 according to Cage Match, and you're saying, Dylan, this is the finals of the Top of the Super Junior, the third edition of this tournament, and you're saying that they had met earlier in the tournament. This is something you messaged me privately. Let's talk about the history of this particular match. So what's the background for this?
Yeah, this was set up again in the tournament. They'd faced off, and how this setup was, the final had Samurai had the most points of the block play, because it was a 9-man tournament. And the way they did it was going to be a final match between the top two, but Liger and Honaga had tied. And Liger had to win a match to get into this final match. So he kind of had like an extra match while Samurai got a bye. In their previous match, that was a great setup to what we would see here, because in that previous match, Samurai had thrown the chair at Liger and did a lot of dirty work, again, as we would see, and a lot of technical wrestling to counter Liger. And that really put over Samurai as someone, again, because as I said before, Liger had mostly been feuding with mid-carders the previous 2 years as kind of the ace of the junior division. And Samurai was just now finding his footing as a pushed commodity in the junior heavyweight division. So they had this wild match. It was about 2 weeks before this. This was on the 30th, and their other match was on the 16th of 1992. And that was a really good match, too, if you can find it. Not as good as this one. But still, in the end, in that one, Samurai ended up winning the match pretty convincingly, though he used a lot of roughneck work that you could tell that was clearly, if you want to note the lucha influence of these two, Samurai made a classic Rudo type of character, which he would do in the match earlier. Lots of wild brawling and things like that. That's something that was really popular around this time in New Japan. Everyone talks about, Hashimoto and the G1s and Shono and all that. But actually, matches that are memorable to me are matches like this, around this era, and the Hase and Muto matches, which were more like crazy brawls to me. So that's something that New Japan really liked to have in their playbook around this time. And Samurai was a great component to that, because he could actually do that in more interesting ways than the others. They tried their best, but they just ultimately, to the fans, they really didn't get over that much. No offense to Honaga at that point. But now Samurai, it finally feels like someone can step up and be on Liger's level, but as a bad guy to counter him. And we saw that in the previous match. And that's exactly what led right into this match. It was perfect booking. You had a match where Samurai upset the top favorite of the tournament through crazy means, and now we get the rematch right here.
Yeah, it's a great background. You obviously can feel kind of that there's this tension between the two guys, and Samurai and Liger. Before we get into the actual match itself, I do have to make a note that this match is, as of this recording, is not available on New Japan World. It's not available to watch on YouTube. I checked. I checked Dailymotion. I checked RooTube, which is like a great site to go to find like matches that might not be anywhere else. I don't know. We're you and I are able to find this. I'm a little remiss. I'm a little hesitant to say how you and I watched this. I do have a tape of this at home, but you sent me a link for this, and I will say this for people who want to watch this match. If you're smart about using Google, you can find this match. Okay, check out different forums. There are forums that will tell you where to find this match. I don't feel I want to say on air how to find this match, mainly because the person who runs the site where I found this match has very strict rules about downloading matches for them. I don't want to send a ton of traffic over there and then wasting his bandwidth. So I will say, if you're smart, go out, look for it. I'm not going to say where to get this match, because it's hosted by somebody that's really well known in the pro res circles, and that's all I'm going to say. So you and I know who who I'm talking about, Dylan, but we can't really say too much beyond that. So sorry. I'm sorry I can't be more use about this. Like, I would really love to tell you, yeah, go to this site. You can find it here. It's not impossible to find. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to be difficult, maybe, if you don't know where to go, but it's not impossible. I will say, check different forums, Pro Wrestling Only, maybe the Observer forums, or what else would be a good site to go to? Maybe Reddit. I think if you say, hey, where can I find this match on Reddit, someone will point you in the right direction.
I also just have to say that the only thing I'll say about that is I've talked to the person that runs that site many times, and he's a very knowledgeable person, very influential in my early goings in Japanese wrestling too. So a lot of my tastes are almost tailored into his recommendations. So a very great person and a great website if you can find it. But like you said, I feel like we're dick teasing right now, and I'm sorry for that to the listeners out there. But
no, I mean, it's kind of a gray area, and I don't really want to go into beyond the gray area. I think it's one thing to say that we got it ourselves from like this site, but like I don't want to advertise the site because it's I don't want the site to disappear, and that's what might happen. You don't know who's listening, right? Yeah,
that's right. So we don't. If anybody asks any questions, just say you don't know. But with me and WH, it's cool. Like I said, but just not on air. Don't tell anybody.
We're in the community. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you know what I mean. But anyways,
yes. The only thing I want to add on the preview for this match too, just to transition out of that to go back to the match, was that it's important to note, as I said, they were really building up Samurai as the evil version, not the evil version, more or less of Liger, but the evil rival to Liger. And Samurai had a noted excursion at this point because he was wrestling under his real name for the first few years of his career. But he went on an excursion to Mexico, and he had just came back a couple of months before this. It was right before, it was right before the Tokyo Dome, I think, had happened. And he had a couple of matches, but he really didn't get to take off before this top of the Super Juniors tournament. He only had like 5, maybe 10 matches or so. Very small time getting built up for this tournament. So this was for El Samurai. This was kind of his first run in New Japan at the start of it after his excursion. He was Osamu Matsuda, which was his real name before. But he had went on the excursion to UWA, and he came back as this character. So this was keep that in mind too when you watch this. This is basically a new guy to the fans in Japan. This wasn't Matsuda to them. This was El Samurai, a new guy when he came in.
Yeah, so let's get into the match. So Liger comes out first to Hikari no Liger. Samurai comes out to his banger theme that I don't know the name of, that you don't know the name of. And for me, it's a little shocking to see Samurai because I'm used to like the kind of the long tights singlet look that he would be known for, like from like the later 90s. He's wearing kind of like these kind of Shinya Hashimoto type pants, with the black pants with the red sash, but they're not like flared pants like the Elvis pants that Hashimoto would wear. They're tucked into his boots. But I just thought it was a unique look, and his mask is very, I'd say not generic, but it's very basic compared to what he would later develop, because like, his later mask would kind of incorporate the war helmet of a samurai.
Yeah, I know. This was basically just a white mask. He still had the eye thing that is he still would have later, the visor type of thing on his mask that covers his eyes. And basically he just had a white mask that was sparkly, and then just had the Japanese flag on the front. That was his main design. He also came out in like what would you call this that he came out with? Like a kimono?
Oh, the robe?
Yeah, the robe.
No, it's not a kimono. Like a kimono is an actual entire outfit out of its own. It's just like a robe. He came out with this traditional robe. Yeah, so he was really working on his character, like you said. The later version of his mask was way cooler than this, but still, I appreciated the visor that he had here. Yes, it's like Cyclops from the X-Men. So we see Liger. He's going, despite all the things you were saying before about their match before. Like Liger goes for a handshake, but Samurai spits in his mask instead. Wow, what an asshole! They start off with a real intense collar and elbow lockup, and a lot of people will say, like wrestling experts will say, like you can tell if a match is going to be like how good a match is going to be based on the initial collar and elbow lockup, and this one was super intense. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get a banger from this match, and to, just so it's out there, this is the first time I've seen this match, Dylan. So
wow.
I'm watching with very fresh eyes. Samurai gets off to an aggressive start, peppering Liger with hard slaps and tearing at his mask. So right away they're going like they're not holding back. They're like just gonna say fuck you. I'm gonna reveal your identity. I'm gonna show how ugly you are to the whole world here. He throws Liger to the floor and assaults him with a. I don't know what he hit him. He grabbed this foreign object from underneath the ring.
This?
And I heard the Japanese commentator say something to the effect of beer bottle, but it didn't look like a beer bottle to me. But there was like liquid coming out of it.
I thought it was like a bottle of ketchup almost, the way it looked. But I could see why it would be a beer bottle, but I don't think it... Did it break? I don't think it did. He just kept hitting him with it.
I think it was like a metal bottle of something, but there was liquid definitely flying out of it as like Samurai would like wallop Liger in the head with it. But definitely, like, the crowd is not liking this. They're booing this. Samurai comes back with a tombstone pile driver on the floor, and the crowd gives him a huge chorus of boos when he gets back into the ring. So he's definitely setting himself up as, like, this mega heel in this match, Dylan.
I thought that was awesome. Like, in probably the first minute of this match, you have that great slap exchange that a Samurai had. He hit him with like 3 or 4 in a row. You have mask ripping. You have a tombstone pile driver on the floor. You have beer bottles. Like, that's all in the first minute. So right there, right away, you have the great lockup that you mentioned. So really, this match hits you right in the face and says, look, this is what it's going to be. like this is this kind of match. It's going to be action. It's going to be heated. The crowd was super into it. I thought Samurai did a great job as a heel here, which is very funny because a lot of people would say at this match that Liger carried this match, but actually Samurai did a lot on his own here. I thought both men were equally responsible. We saw it here with the beer bottle. Who left that under the ring is what I want to know. That's the question that needs to be asked right now. Who leaves here?
Probably Choshu. It's probably Choshu. Anyways, I made a note here about Liger is caught in a camel clutch from El Samurai, and despite being in a full bodysuit and wearing a mask that covers his entire face, he's able to emote his pain through his voice, like his screams and his cries of pain, and through his body language. And I think one thing that people don't give him enough credit for, like, it's hard to show emotion through, like, not just a full body mask, but he's wearing a full bodysuit. So, like, you can't really get a sense of, like, what he's feeling, right? But you can, because he's such a great worker. He's so great at selling. Like, his hand, like, that's the only part of his body that's not covered. He does so much with his hand. If you watch in this camel clutch position that he's in, like, he uses his hand so much to sell, like, how much pain he's in and, like, how much damage Samurai is doing to him. Like, it's one of those things that I think we subconsciously maybe recognize, at least I do. But it's something that you should, like, think about watching when you watch his matches, like, how he sells so much with just his hand, and the rest of his body. But, like, he has to emote all this through something that is part of his gimmick and enhances him a lot, but also can be kind of a detriment in terms of, like, the basic psychology of wrestling.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Something that I noted as well, not just the hand, but when he pulled him before the camel clutch spot, he did another tombstone pile driver in the ring, Samurai did, and immediately went for the mask. And how does Liger sell this? He starts flailing around and kicking his legs around, which was a great way to convey emotion. And then we saw the camel clutch, like you mentioned, and basically he was trying to tear the mask away through the camel clutch, but Liger, just with his one arm, he did the most important thing, which was try desperately to cover up his face. So even if he got the mask off, you wouldn't be able to see his face. So he, like you said, he sold so much with just minimal availability that unmasked workers and guys in very small, attire, very, non-covering attire have to work with that he didn't. And he still put on a great performance that anybody watching this, you could tell that, look, he doesn't want the mask to come off, and he's in danger with this crazy asshole El Samurai. That I think, 1.5, 2 minutes into this match, they had already set the table for an entire story, pretty much. I thought that was amazing.
Samurai goes for the Dragon Sleeper surfboard combination, which is Liger's signature move. So he's, like, trying to add insult to injury here. Obviously, he doesn't get any submission from this. Liger is too tough. He invented the move. He's not going to submit to it. Samurai has Liger in the corner and just hits him with a series of punches. And Liger's had about enough of this shit. So Liger finally fires back with a big chop to the face of Samurai. He then hits Samurai with a series of chops to the forehead and suplexes Samurai from the ring over the top rope to the floor. So like Liger has finally like recovered from the initial assault from Samurai, and he's just said, "Fuck this guy. You want to know what it's like to get your ass kicked? Well, now it's happening." So this is like Liger's control period of the match, Dylan.
That spot was so awesome to me. Basically, the spot where Samurai had taken total control of this match for the first probably, 5, 6, 7 minutes of the match. And suddenly he has him in the corner, he's punching him like you said, and Liger just decks him with the left hand that knocks him down. I love that it was the left that he used to knock him down. And it just devastated him, and he goes to town on him. He shoves the ref out of the way and says, "It's on," and punches him right in the face, kicks him. It was so nasty, and I just thought it was just a great spot of that end. And like you said, he threw him out of the ring, and it was great because to me, Liger is someone that when you look at him again, just looking at him, and obviously back in our era pretty much, the WCW Liger on the first Nitro, wherever you saw him, he was around even before that against Flying Brian. But to me, you always expect Jushin Liger, this anime character, high flyer, lots of moves, masked wrestler. But actually, he was a totally not that, not that he couldn't do the shooting star press, obviously he invented, but as a wrestler, he was much more grounded than you may expect. And he knew so much. He was such an all-around great wrestler. And this was just something that many, many workers couldn't pull off as well as he did. And like you said, the emotion of it came through just with his actions. And he did it again. But I love that spot where he hit him with the left hand. That was his first offensive move of the match. And I just thought that was a great spot to have the turning point.
From there, they're on the floor. Liger follows him out to the floor, and then he exposes the concrete floor under the mats, and he fucking powerbombs Samurai right onto it. And you don't get the good camera angle, so the camera is shooting it like kind of far away. So you see the aftermath, and all the newspaper camera photojournalists are like kind of blocking the view. But I think it kind of adds to it. Like your imagination is kind of running wild with like, oh my god, he powerbombed him onto the concrete floor. You don't get to see the full effect, but it's one of those things in like horror movies. The most effective, the most effective things are not like showing the gore or anything. It's like the suggestion of what is happening to the victim. So I'm thinking the worst things are happening to Samurai's back at this point with this powerbomb, Dylan.
I also think it's very realistic in conveying the wild nature of this match and this feud that they're kind of just, kicking off right now. But it feels like something that would be realistic if things got out of control, Like they weren't prepared for it to go this level. That seems better than if it was a perfect camera shot or something like in WWE where there'd be 20,000 camera cuts to it. But, everything's always so glossy in a lot of wrestling these days, and not just WWE, but in general. Things are always so glossy and like perfectly shot, and there's like a real thing. I think the spontaneity of certain things like that are missing in a lot of wrestling these days, and we captured it here, like an out of control situation. These two can't be controlled, and here we have the exposed concrete getting powerbombed into it. Nobody expected this to happen, but here it is, and we did our best. But hey, all we can have is this zoomed out shot where all the photographers can't believe what they're seeing and have to surround it. So I love that. That was another great part. I noted down as well.
From here, Liger hits Samurai with a capo kick and proceeds to tear Samurai's mask right off. Yeah. So Liger's mask is torn, but it's still he can still cover his face. What Liger does to Samurai's mask, he basically rips the fucking thing right off of his head, and it's just basically hanging from around his neck. So you can see Samurai's face. You can see Osamu Matsuda like exposed as being El Samurai. His identity has been compromised. Wow, Liger's not fucking around. Like, obviously, Liger can control how much he wants to tear this mask. He can tear it a little, maybe just expose the eyes. He tore the whole fucking thing off. So, like, he's saying to all the fans here, like, I fucking hate this guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I just love the dichotomy of it again, because it totally puts over Samurai as much as Liger. And Liger's rep is that he'll put over anybody. Pretty much, and just look at that, his Super J-Cup performance against Hayabusa, total unknown person. This was kind of like the precursor to that in an even bigger and better way. because to put him that way, again, as I mentioned before, he was facing other heels that were against him and did dirty stuff, but he was never able to take it to this level. And already in 2 matches, Samurai has already proven to be such a dick to him that he can't help but be an even greater dick and unleash the full dick of Jushin Thunder Liger that he had here. And we saw it pop out here.
Okay, that's a really good pun there. Anyways, Liger takes Samurai to the outside and slams him to the floor. He then climbs to the top turnbuckle and hits Samurai with a diving senton, driving his head into Samurai's breadbasket. So we're still getting the era of like high flying, high risk Daredevil Jushin Thunder Liger. This is pre brain tumor surgery. So and there's like that whole idea of like there's before the brain tumor where he's like a high flyer, he's a daredevil, and then post brain tumor surgery where he's more of a technical wrestler, Dylan. So we're getting like the Daredevil Liger in this match.
Yeah, he still had much more elements of that in this match. Yeah, totally. But I love too, another note to make on that Samurai did here. You can see him struggling his best to try and keep that torn up mask on, and it's like totally ripped in half. There was no way that was going to cover his face, but he still tried to pull it on when he was on the ground. And Liger hit that amazing senton from the top to the floor, which is just awesome. Yeah, like I said, I thought that was a great move. And like you said, yeah, this was before his brain tumor. So we still got to see a little bit of that. Although this match wasn't as much about the high flying, it was much more of an all-around great performance. So the fact that he still had that in his arsenal made him so popular. That move got a huge pop from the fans, too. And I thought that was great to separate the dichotomy of Jushin Thunder Liger and El Samurai as well. That's something that Sammy couldn't really bring to the table to that level that Liger did.
From there, a big missile dropkick sends Samurai head over ass. Liger follows up with a King Kong knee drop from the top rope. Liger is really being vicious here. Another capo kick is delivered, and Samurai's selling with his facials was so amazing. Like, he gets hit with a capo kick in the corner, and he's like, it's like he got shot in the face with a shotgun. It was so amazing. Like, and of course, maybe it was good that the mask is torn off, just because like you got to see his entire facial expression, Dylan.
Also, the fact that he kept wearing it never came completely off. It was like hanging over his face, not covering anything, maybe like the chin, pretty much, maybe the mouth at most. But even then, that basically was fully exposed. It was almost like it was hanging around his neck, like a choker or a collar or a bandana or something like that. So it just gave a great visual in and of itself, because it's like he's still hanging on to this El Samurai stuff, even though his whole face is exposed. And like you said, it also helped him show and convey emotion, which he was actually surprisingly great at here, and I thought that helped make the match take it to a different level. And I really think Samurai, although this series is about Liger, obviously, I really think Samurai deserves a lot of credit for his performance in this match that I don't think he fairly got at the time. I saw some of the reviews say that Liger carried this, and I couldn't disagree more with that, because I thought he did a great job here, and you made a great point with his facial expression.
A third capo kick sends Samurai to the floor again, and from here, Liger hits a moonsault body press from the top rope to the floor onto El Samurai. Just fucking amazing. The crowd is super hot at this point. There's a huge Liger call from the fans in Sumo Hall. From here, Liger locks in a vicious key lock, but Samurai, being the tough bastard that he is, he reaches the ropes. There's another key lock transitioned into an armbar, but another rope escape. And let's make a note here. Jushin Thunder Liger is a great fucking technical wrestler.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like when you think about him, you think high flyer, suit, luchador, anime character, but actually he was an amazing all around worker. Whether it was emotionally, brawling, technical wrestling, it's like the dude had it all. He did a little bit of everything, and that's why I think he doesn't really get remembered that much as a high flyer, because he really was like, he had a bit of everything. He wasn't like someone like Ultimo Dragon. He was a pure flyer. That was really his game ultimately, but he couldn't touch Liger when it came to certain things that he had, or many other flyers, not just him. But, I think that's something that really needs to be noted about Liger, is that he was as good of a wrestler as any heavyweight, junior, whatever. He could wrestle any style, and we saw it here in this match.
In this era, I think two of my favorite technical wrestlers at the time would be like him and Bret the Hitman Hart. Like, I think he was just as good of a technical wrestler as Bret or even Owen Hart was. Like, I think those three were probably three of the best technical wrestlers on the planet in the early and late 90s. So it's really something that I think not gets overlooked, but people don't talk about as much because he invented the shooting star press. He did a lot of crazy things in terms of like jumping off the top rope, and he had the mask and the bodysuit, so he looked like a character. But you don't necessarily associate him being a mat wrestler, but he is. He's actually an amazing mat wrestler. He has awesome transitions. Getting back to the match, Samurai is able to turn the tide of the match. He gets shot into the ropes by Liger, but he ducks a clothesline and wallops Liger with a flying forearm to his face. So now Samurai has like rallied back here. There's a missile drop kick from Samurai. Samurai sends Liger to the floor and hits a big plancha onto him. A Russian leg sweep, and then from Samurai, which he turns into a modified armbar, which Liger escapes. So it's this kind of like, I don't know, like I want to kind of talk about this like armbar. So he's got hold of Liger's arm, but he wraps Liger's neck and head in around like his legs. Well, how would you describe this? Is there a name for this move?
I'm not sure what the name of this move would be. Like I said, it was kind of like so this is after he hit the Russian leg sweep and he locked in the armbar, but it was kind of like an octopus stretch almost, a grounded octopus, I would say.
Maybe like a quarter octopus stretch, because it's not like even half on. It's like a quarter on. Yeah. Let's call it that, Dylan. We've now named this move the quarter octopus stretch, or how Kensuke Sasaki had the stranglehold gamma, and then the one match I reviewed with Mavs Gillis, like the announcers called a kind of a botched version of that move, the stranglehold beta. So this is like the octopus stretch beta.
I thought he did a great job because he also locked the arm in a Rings of Saturn-esque hold and not just a straight up armbar while he had the octopus on. So or like the beta octopus, or the octopus beta, as you would call it. I thought this was actually a really nifty move, and out of the Russian leg sweep too. So I really appreciate that. I thought he did a great job. The little things in this match were so strong because I loved when Liger worked on Samurai's arm. Not only did Samurai sell it well, Liger did an amazing job of showing like such aggression on top of it. You mentioned that moonsault to the outside. That's another thing I noted down. I want to get back to briefly, just to jump back, is because I noted, and that's another case of the shooting of the camera angles. Because the way they shot it is basically he did a moonsault, but the reporters covered Samurai, so you couldn't see him actually land it. It's like it made it look like Liger had jumped into a canyon, and you couldn't see it. Like, it was a great camera angle for that moonsault to the outside. So really, everything was on point at this point, and to the point in the match where we had the arm work from Liger. Samurai had countered and made his return and locked in the octopus beta with the Rings of Saturn stretch applied. And they have a great camera angle of Liger on the ground, and they zoom in on his face where you could see that his mask had been torn now, and his eyes were closed, but you could only see one eye. I thought it was an absolutely excellent camera shot here, and really similar. Like, this was a great freaking match at this point. I thought I have to say, I thought that was just an amazing camera shot, and amazing work from both men at this point.
Yeah, from there, Samurai goes for a sleeper, but obviously he's not getting the win with that move. Liger blocks a superplex and hits Samurai with a diving body press instead. So basically, Samurai's going for the superplex from the top rope. Liger, blocks it. He drives Samurai off the ropes, and Samurai lands on the mat, and then he follows up. Liger follows up with this beautiful diving body press.
It was like he glided in the air. Remember in the '98 Hashimoto Yamazaki match where Hashimoto glided on his elbow drop? This was like the same effect that Liger had on this body press, where he glided through the air to get to El Samurai here. I thought that was beautiful.
His flying, like his midair, like his grace is really a beautiful thing to see. It's very reminiscent for me of like anytime like Eddie Guerrero would do one of his frog splashes, but when I thought, here's the funny thing, I always thought his frog splashes looked better. I don't know why in New Japan and WCW than they did in the WWF. Maybe because of maybe he got bigger, it's still beautiful, but I just thought it was more beautiful like when he was Black Tiger in New Japan and when he was like himself, obviously in WCW. But from there, there's a tombstone pile driver. But Liger misses with another diving rolling senton, and Samurai blocks a dropkick attempt. But Liger catches him with a jackknife powerbomb. So there's this like big back and forth sequence. So we're really kind of getting into what I would refer to in the Cruel Summer series is like the crescendo of the match here, Dylan.
Yeah, and I love that he used the tombstone because that was great psychology, to bring the match full circle from the tombstone that Samurai used earlier in the match. Now Liger did it. It's like this was perfect for the story they wanted to tell, and I can't really emphasize this enough. What they wanted to do in this match, like to make Samurai the evil counterpart to Liger. It's like there was perfect symmetry from the match. You had the mask ripping, you had the tombstone from Samurai first, then Liger did it later. You had the mask ripping on Samurai to Liger first, and then Liger ripped Samurai's later. Then Samurai ripped Liger's mask later fully and finally succeeded. It's like there was this amazing back and forth of symmetry from these two that was not only great for the match itself, but for the overall grand scheme of what they wanted. It's like, not only was this a great wrestling match, psychologically, this was on the next level. Very few wrestlers besides someone like Jushin Thunder Liger, especially at this time, like I said, remember, this is a new guy to the fans, and like really, he just came off of his excursion. He's not a veteran wrestler at all. It wouldn't be as great as, he became later. But in this match, he looked every bit of a legend, like on the Legends level that he did in this match. And I thought that was just amazing work from both men, but especially Liger here to really put this on.
Liger places Samurai on his shoulders and climbs to the second rope and falls back, only getting a 2.5 count here. Very close one, though. Samurai gets close to with a roll-up Frankensteiner. German suplex for Samurai, a 2. Liger follows up. He comes back and hits a top rope DDT, then an avalanche belly to back suplex from here. And Dylan, why don't you close out the rest of this match?
Yeah, so he hit the super backdrop at that point. So he picked him up again and put him on the top rope and hit a Frankensteiner. And I made sure to note this: he dragged his carcass up. To me, like the storytelling of this match, he basically won it with the DDT, but he did that just because he hated this prick El Samurai so much. So he hits the Frankensteiner and then falls back. Like, so this was so amazing how this happened. He landed basically on his butt, but then like popped up just enough to gracefully fall back and just collapse on top of Samurai. His entire body, his arms sprawled out, and won with that match. Won the match with that. I thought that was an amazing finish, and streamers immediately got thrown in. The crowd was going nuts. Like, that was just perfect. Like, that's something that nobody could do on purpose. It just happens. When a great match is at that level, sometimes that stuff just comes together, and it did here in this match. I thought that was just freaking awesome. I love that finish so much.
Yeah, I like you. I like the part where he like, I think he was supposed to roll through into a pinning combination, but like he lost control, like maybe at the the last quarter of that roll through from the Frankensteiner, and then he just kind of plopped onto him. Like, so El Samurai basically became El Futon in this match at the end for the 1, 2, 3. So like let's talk about this match, like the aftermath of it, Dylan. What are your like overall thoughts about Jushin Thunder Liger versus El Samurai from the top of the Super Junior finals from the third edition of this tournament from Ryogoku Kokugi-kan?
Well, I mean, I thought it was an unbelievable match, to be honest with you. One of the best, to me, I'm one of those that would have to consider this one of the best junior heavyweight matches in New Japan. One of Liger's best matches for sure. It's so important on top of it because without this match specifically, this really meant so much for El Samurai, So to me, I just thought that was amazing that they went so far in this match. It led to El Samurai the next month. He actually got a junior heavyweight title shot against Liger in a match that went really long and put him over more. They had a back and forth feud, and actually Samurai would actually win the title in June. So that really shows you where the junior heavyweight division was at this point, and how desperately they needed another Japanese star. Because you had guys like Wild Pegasus there at the moment, but for a Japanese star to come in like that, Samurai really got super over, largely because of this match and the great impression it left. And as I said, it would lead to his first title win in June of that year. So clearly it was successful, and Samurai to me is one of the integral parts of the junior heavyweight division. Obviously, in Liger's career, this really felt like to me, because as I said, he had the great match versus Sano, and he was a great wrestler. I did my best of the 90s series, for 1990 on the Patreon, for me, the Eastern Lariat Patreon. And I always said, it's like he was this great worker, but nobody else could really match him, and he wasn't having the great matches on my list as someone like in the All Japan Heavyweights, as we mentioned. But now with Samurai there, he had somebody, and you could build the division around these two with the great Gaijin that we talked about, and more people they would bring in later on. Kanemoto was still about to get into gear. And by the end of the decade, Liger really found that he really had the surrounding cast to make junior heavyweight wrestling special. And we saw that 2 years later with the Super J Cup, which was right around the time of this match happened to the day almost. So very great match. I thought Samurai was unbelievable, especially for such a young wrestler. Somebody that I thought he really showed in this match that he had everything it took to be a top junior heavyweight star. But nobody could beat Liger. Clearly, he was the one guiding this match. And just everything about it, just like I said, the finish, you mentioned it, maybe he was supposed to roll through, but I actually thought that was even better. That's when you know you have a classic match, when stuff just kind of falls together that you don't even mean it to. And so I really loved everything about it. Great brawl, hatred, great, cool moves they had here for 1992. These two were out of this world. Samurai, too, I have to mention in this match. I don't want to rail at him too much because this is a Jushin Liger show. But Samurai, another thing that I think is great about him is that even now, his bumping ability was top tier among the juniors. And you saw it when he took the missile drop kick. You saw it when he got dumped to the outside. He made normal moves look better than they were, especially against someone like Liger that's so important. And to me, both guys just stood out, and this was a tremendous match. I don't know what you thought of it, because as I said, some people think it was boring and that it was one-sided, that Liger was the one that carried the match. But to me, I thought this was an absolutely excellent performance for both men. And watching it now, I had seen this match before. Watching it again this time, it totally held up, in my opinion. It's something that I feel like is timeless in its style. And I loved watching it again, and I loved being a part of the show to talk about this match that, unfortunately, someone like yourself that maybe wasn't watching, live or getting tapes at the time might not have seen it before. So to all the listeners out there, I really, really recommend it. I just thought it was a great match and important to both men's careers as well, I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. If I was gonna star rate it, I would probably give it like a 4.25, maybe up to 4.5. I really liked it because like my viewing of like the relationship of Liger and Samurai, they were more allies and tag team partners rather than rivals. So I loved the intensity of this match. You had like the work itself, but the tearing of the mask was like so dramatic, and it just added like the fuel to the fire of their rivalry in this particular match, especially like more so Liger like really basically exposing Samurai's face. You can clearly see that he's Osamu Matsuda. If people followed him through his Young Lion days, they would, oh, it's Matsuda, he's back. Oh, he's Samurai. Like, I mean, I think he has a very distinct jawline. So, if you didn't know that Osamu Matsuda was fucking El Samurai, like before, like he got the mask got ripped off, I don't know what to tell you. You might need to go see your optometrist, maybe get a new set of glasses. Who knows? But like, I really enjoyed it. I definitely recommend it to anyone who can find it on the site that we won't mention. It's out there. Check it out. I really like. One thing I want to mention, like if we're going to compare this match to like say modern New Japan, I thought the match layout, especially the finish, was really, really interesting. There wasn't this move, counter, move formula that we see in some in like a lot of Goto matches, a lot of Jay White matches, a lot of Okada matches. You don't see that in this match. It's basically Liger was down, Samurai had the advantage, Liger regained the advantage, hit his big move, and he won. And I thought that was perfect. I don't think every wrestling match needs to be this fucking ballet sequence, which we see of and I'm not going to bang on New Japan about this. This exists in a lot of wrestling in all over the world, and I think if you were like more judicious about that as a booker, that it would mean more. Those matches would be a lot more memorable, but they're not, because like everyone does them in wrestling. Like you'll have a fucking mid-card match do some of this. Move, counter move, counter move. Like multi-man tag matches in New Japan sometimes have these kinds of sequences. I don't want to see that. Honestly, like some people are jobbers. Treat them as such. In New Japan, you have like the young guys. They're the jobbers. Like you have like some of these guys being brought in from other dojos. Use them as jobbers. That's nothing against them. Chase Owens, not to bang on him, but like let's be honest, he's a jobber. His job is to look good, taking finishing moves from the stars, okay? That's how you use them. You don't have Chase Owens have a fucking counter move sequence with fucking Juice Robinson or fucking Tomohiro Ishii. You don't do that. I don't know why anyone thinks that's a good idea, that he gets to get a shine like that, because he's a fucking jobber, okay? And that's how you use them. Ren Narita, right now, is a fucking jobber. Use him as such, okay? I'm not just want to bang on Chase Owens for this, but it really bothers me about modern wrestling, like, that every fucking match has to have this kind of ballet in it. And you don't need it. This is perfect. Like, sometimes you can end a big main event match just like this, Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was tremendous. Even in the... I just say one thing about these two. You mentioned they were much more known as friends than enemies, per se. Even by the end of the year, they would team up, pretty much. It was just too natural of a partnership, really, to have them. But for this little 3 or 4 month run of enemies, I thought they did a great job with it. Compared to modern New Japan, oh yeah, it was highly different. Now there was none of that stuff, even compared to the junior heavyweights in New Japan. And I mean, like, Ospreay and Shingo was a great match, but they had the long drawn out sequence at the end as well. There really wasn't a definitive, and this was the finals of a tournament too. Keep in mind, this wasn't like just a random mid card match. Like I said, compare that to the Shingo and Ospreay match, and it was a completely different style of match than you would see today, or even would think of, something like that. So it really stands out when you look at stuff now. And a lot of Liger's matches were like that. And like I said, as I said, I know that many people think of him as a high flyer, but he really wasn't. And it's not that he didn't have those kind of big moves, but that really wasn't his true style. If you look at these last 3 years, his famous matches were against Sano, Onaga, this match. They were all like emotion-based brawling matches that had definitive finishes. There was no big back and forth. This match here, it's like it was all about the emotion of it, and he got a definitive win. So I wish we would get back to that as well, like much more of a definitive winner, because I really think you can make that criticism about, nearly every match. And not, like I said, not just in New Japan. Even Kento at times can do stuff like that. Look at his match with Nomura recently. I had a little bit of that. Maybe not nearly as bad as someone like Switchblade, but there was a little bit of that too. So the style itself has really kind of changed to that. I don't know for the better, though, because I thought this was a great match, like I said, and I really loved the layout of it and the finish of it. I think this would be great if they did something like this. And like, I don't know who it would be or where they would set up next year, but like if I mentioned the Shingo and Ospreay match, if that had come where Shingo finally took him out because he was undefeated at the time, that would be a similar way to do that. Or Ospreay, if you wanted to have him make a dominant, triumphant move to heavyweight, just have a definitive winner. All moves in a row. He had it won, and he did it. Just this match required hatred too to pull off a finish like this as well. So I will say that much. A lot of the matches don't really have that kind of heat to them. Like what was that Jay White and that Naito feud about really? Like was there any kind of devastating personal issue? Did anybody bleed or anything like that? Not really. It was basically just they kind of like sat across the ring and spit at each other, like pretty much. So that really wouldn't work in a lot of these Jay White matches because his character just isn't like that. Or Okada or Goto, obviously. So a lot of it comes down to the characters. If you had truly a badass, violent character like this that was also a great worker, I think that could work. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that yet, just in terms of booking in combination with talent ability at that style.
I think just to be clear, like I'm not opposed to the style of finishing matches with like, moves and counter moves and having like sequences. But I think those things should be reserved for like special matches, like title matches, or the end of like a really heated rivalry. I just think I see too much of it in New Japan. I see a lot of it. I don't see as much of it in like All Japan because a lot of the undercard guys don't do that style. They don't. They know their place. They very clearly know their place, right? And like Noah, you don't really see that in Noah either. Like if I watch a Noah, I'm not going to see fucking Akitoshi Saito do a fucking counter move sequence, right? Like he's on the undercard. He knows his place, right? So it is really, like it really is like something that New Japan is riddled with. I think there's a problem there. Not obviously it doesn't affect their box office. People like it, but just for me as a fan, I'm not a huge fan of it. But just to like wrap it up with this review, yeah. So definitely El Samurai, Liger. They had a great rivalry in this match, in this tournament. They would later become tag team partners and friends. They would actually form a group called the Junior Horsemen in New Japan. It would be Liger, Samurai, Wild Pegasus, and Black Tiger, and their main rivals would be the kind of, I don't know what you call them. Like they never had a team name or a unit name, but like Kanemoto, Takaiwa, and Otani, and like Honaga was in there. Basically, anyone who didn't wear a mask or wasn't a foreigner was in Otani's group. Otani I felt was the clear leader of that group, even though maybe Kanemoto was a bit more of his senior. I felt like Otani's natural charisma made him more the leader. And rivalry, like those three guys, Takaiwa, Otani, and Kanemoto, and various people against Liger and all his allies was just one of the driving forces of that rivalry in New Japan, of that division as a whole, was driven by these matches that these two units would have.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And after Pegasus and Black Tiger left, you saw it replaced with people like Kendo Kashin, Dr. Wagner Jr., Silver King, all those guys we mentioned earlier. So it's like if you said, if you wore a mask, you had a friend in Liger and Samurai by the time the late 90s came along. And I can't believe, I never understood why Otani's group never had a name. You're right, Otani. They kind of like, I don't want to say phased out Otani, but I think a big reason why he left for 0-1 is because Kanemoto was kind of the leader by then. And they also kind of had a little bit of a breakup because remember, that's when Tanaka came in by the time Otani had left. So they kind of split that group into Kanemoto and Tanaka and Otani and Takaiwa. But yeah, those three as a group, they never had a name, and I never understood why. But
you know what? Maybe they were early versions of the Enochius that exist on wrestling Twitter. black trunks, black boots. Very very traditional like bare bones aesthetics to them, and they wrestled and stuff. Yeah, I guess you could we'll just call them. No, I don't want to see. I don't like the Enochius on Twitter, so I'm not gonna call this group that I fucking love the Enochius. But you can kind of draw a parallel, maybe. But anyways, what I called them? I used to call them the upstarts because they were the guys who were hungry for Liger's spot. They were like all these mask guys. Why do these mask guys get all the top spots in this fucking division? We want them, and we're not gonna gimmick ourselves up. We're just gonna keep black boots, black tights, black knee pads, and we're gonna fuck these guys up. All these guys wearing these cartoon masks and looking like clowns. That's kind of how I felt the rivalry was kind of like laid out philosophically.
Yes, I do agree. Although I will say, in this era or that era, Otani's interest jacket was awesome. Like I said, so he had a great red jacket. I will give him that much. And he moved into the blurry red and black tights, which he still has today as well. So he tried to change along with the times after 2000 at least. By the time Kanemoto broke off from the group, you could just call them the earliest version of the Junior Stars, just without Tanaka as well. Perhaps Samurai later on, now we're jumping way ahead, but, Liger and all of that. Samurai, by the end of his run in New Japan, he was actually a trainer to a lot of the juniors. He actually helped train guys like Yujiro, Taguchi. He was involved with those guys by the end. The dude was a great performer. Liger, everybody kind of knows about him. I think Samurai left though eventually, near the very end of his career. He worked some spot shows. He wrestled in All Japan for a little bit. Had a bit of a team with Kaz Hayashi in the late 2000s. He wrestled in Michinoku Pro, and he did some spot shows at DDT in his hometown too. His home territory of Aichi as well. So Aichi. So dude had a crazy career. It's kind of underrated. And Liger, what more can be said about them? But yeah, eventually this was the start, really. Even though they were hated rivals at this point, very quickly, like you said, they would turn around and to become friends and partners and allies. And they still had matches against each other now and then in the tournaments and things like that, because that's just how the junior heavyweight division worked at the time, pretty much. Friends and allies fought before they had, really, the junior tag titles really didn't come along until the end of '98. So they really didn't have anything fighting over in this feud. It was just for pride. And how is the best way to describe this? They're ideals more so than titles. Like you said, the black tights, the generic look, but great talent versus the great talent, but also super colorful and standing out characters. So really crazy stuff how that all happened in the late 90s. And it started here.
I think the big thing we can take away from this is, the greatness of Jushin Liger, but also don't sleep on El Samurai, folks. If you want to check out someone who's a great junior heavyweight in his own right, definitely check out some of the New Japan stuff that El Samurai did in the 90s. You mentioned the Kanemoto match from the Best of the Super Juniors final that they were in. That I remember that match. That is an amazing match, so check that out. Dylan, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining me. What can you plug for the listeners out there? Where can people find more Dylan Fox?
Check me out on Twitter at DylanZeroSky. Spell out all the words and stuff. I talk about all kinds of wrestling. I do shows about Japanese wrestling and Mexican wrestling primarily, but I watch a little bit of everything. I try to keep up with Rit-Res, as crazy as the British scene can get these days. American wrestling, I try my best, even though some of the discourse is kind of annoying. Sometimes it's no fault of anyone in particular. I just think that, I think a lot of times the stuff on Twitter comes, even stuff with people that hate on me or anything, you mentioned the Enochiist you don't like. I think all of that stuff comes from a good place, which is the passion that they feel for these subjects, whether American wrestling or something maybe underrated in their minds or unfairly dumped on, like Enochiism or whatever. I think it all comes from a good place, but unfortunately, you have to really know how to express yourself in ways to not look like kind of a jerk online. And a lot of the people I talk to, thankfully, most of them don't. Obviously, there are some crazy people out there, but most of them are pretty cool that I've seen. A lot of the people that follow me and talk to me about stuff. So I really appreciate those interactions. You may disagree, WH, that many of the people are cool on there.
But there's a lot of cool people on wrestling Twitter. Even if you disagree with my philosophies of wrestling, I don't care. My problem with a lot of whether they're the Enochiists or the Ghettoists or whatever the fuck they are, it's sometimes if you say I like this, okay, that's cool. And I don't like this, that's cool. I do that all the time. I don't say, however, I don't go out here and saying, if you don't like this, you're a fool. You're an idiot for not liking this. I don't take that stance, and I feel a lot of some of the people, less interesting people on Twitter who talk about wrestling and have certain philosophies, their stance is you're an idiot because you don't think Bob Sapp was the greatest IWGP champion of all time. Okay, no, I'm not an idiot because I think he was a terrible IWGP champion, just like I think Brock Lesnar was a terrible fucking IWGP champion. But there are people who think Brock Lesnar was a great IWGP champion, and he wasn't. He was fucking shit. Okay, I rather the Russian dudes. I think they were better IWGP champions than either Sapp or Lesnar were, and
those guys were awesome.
The
Russian guys were awesome.
I fucking I like Brock Lesnar overall, but he was terrible in Japan. He just squashed people. There's no give from him. And Sapp was just, he was a celebrity. He's a big dude, very impressive. I think if they got him to him sooner, he would have had a great run as IWGP champion maybe. But by the time they got to him, his 15 minutes were coming up. His body was broken down. He didn't have good matches. And it was the height of the Inoki office, controlling that fucking company. So no. Anyways, but beyond your Twitter handle, Dylan, you do have a podcast that you do with a wonderful friend of ours from Germany, and also Patreon. Let's plug that.
Yeah. In addition to Twitter, I do the Eastern Lariat with my friend Striga, who is the owner of CageMatch.net. I'm sure that's a site a lot of people listening to this know about and check on. I also do Lucha Talk with my good friend Alfredo Esparza, who runs Lucha World and Retro Wrestling. So he's a really great, person when it comes to those sorts of wrestling deals. Sometimes Microman Fever, who translates a lot of the Spanish stuff for us, is on there too. But he's been real busy lately. But he's going to be on for the anniversary show that we're doing. So by the time you listen to this, he should be back on. He's just a little bit busy at the time of this recording. Check out our Patreon for the Eastern Lariat. That's really important. Check it out, patreon.com/Eastern Lariat. I have Striga on. WH, you've been very kind, actually, to come on my shows as well. Some of the shows I've done on there. Pure Heart, Pure Lariat, which is free. That's the Joshi version of Eastern Lariat. WH, you've been on there a couple of times too. Whenever you have the time to that. So I really appreciate that. You can listen to some of the old episodes too. A lot of them are timeless as well, especially the Pure Heart ones. I have interviews with people. We talked about the Stardom documentary. It's stuff you can listen to on in, and we definitely want to have you on for some more stuff. I do, for sure, and I'm working on it to get some cool stuff out there. So hopefully by the time this drops, like I said, me and you will have some other cool stuff there. The Patreon has all kinds of crazy stuff on there. Other guests are coming up on there too, should be on there. We do shows about pretty much every single promotion in Japan that makes air, whether it's 0-1, Wrestle 1, DDT, Noah, All Japan, Stardom. I covered the entire 5-star Grand Prix. Every show that G1 was done. I'm going to do the Champion Carnival next year, every show. If no one ever puts the N1 up in full, I'll do that for every show. It's like, man, we cover everything on that thing. If you love Japanese wrestling, I would definitely recommend it. We have New Japan inspired tiers too, the $1, $3, and $5 tiers. $1 gets you in the door. You get when we do cage match shows or live reviews. $3 tier, you get stuff because sometimes we break out and record American shows or report on American shows and stuff like that. They're on the $3 tiers. Tiger Mask W review show we do on there. Me and my sister actually do that. She loves anime, so she joined me with that. $5 tier, you get everything, all the stuff with me at WH, the Spot Lariat shows, the documentary series we did the week of. We did a whole show on Shinya Hashimoto. We have one coming up about Keiji Muto as well on there. So we're getting all the Musketeers. We're doing all kinds of crazy stuff and different projects. I have the 1990s project, which is the best of the 90s. I've completed every bit of the top 50 list of 1990, as well as the awards show. So 1990 has everything, and I'm going to be doing every single year of the 90s, from 91, 92, all the way to 99, and then the best of the decade. And hey, maybe the match we talked about, WH, will be on my list for 1992. I suspect it will be. I don't want to spoil that project, but when 92 goes along, I expect I will be talking about Jushin Liger and El Samurai yet again on the Patreon. So check that out.
I'll be waiting with bated breath and open ears for that. I'm a subscriber of the Eastern Layer Patreon. I'm on the big Hashimoto tier. I personally like this is a good thing. There's so much content, it's hard for me to keep up. I will usually schedule a long walk to catch up on a lot of my podcasting, listening, that is, and I don't do podcasting while I'm walking, obviously. That'd be weird. But definitely, like, for my money, like, the most frequent and most comprehensive, producers of content is yourself and Striga with for Perez, especially on the Eastern Lariat, and I'm always excited to when a new episode drops of the main show and of your Patreon stuff. Definitely check them out. Patreon.com/Eastern Lariat. My name's WH Park. You can follow me at WH Park 9. Of course, I do the Post Perez show with John Pollock over at postwrestling.com. And then I sometimes appear on the Eastern Lariat Patreon with Dylan, where I go on sometimes these massive rants against Weebos. That's a timeless rant, Dylan.
Yeah, that was
my rant against the Weebos.
That wasn't even on the Patreon. That was on Pure Heart. You did that against the Weebos there. I think both episodes of Pure Heart you ranted, because remember the first was against that annoying guy that was in the the starter, but then the second one was during the documentary. So, and you had a bunch of hot takes on that. Both of those are available to listen. If you want a little bit of a taste of what you'll get on the Patreon, you can listen to me and WH. Well, it's funny because on the Eastern Lariat, I'm always the more exuberant, as you would say, member of the group, or of the pair. But when me and you are together, you even are not only on my level, but overtake me to the point where I have to be more serious. So you bring the best out of me, WH, with your rants, especially against Weebos, which I think we pretty much agreed on for the most part. So I really appreciate your charisma that you bring to the table and your knowledge as well. Especially in that case, it was very important because you live in Japan, so you're always like my go-to guy. And not just you, but you're definitely one of my top go-to guys when it comes to the Japanese perspective of things. Even though you're a foreigner still, you have lived there for so long. I really trust your opinion over a lot of the guys online that maybe, I don't want to insult anybody, but maybe don't know as much as you do. So yeah, you're always like one of my.
They're probably fucking weebos themselves, so they don't know shit anyways. Like on that note, like I will want to take note. Thank you, Dylan, once again for joining me on this episode. I want to thank the listeners for listening to the series. This is as of this recording, I believe this is the 6th episode. Check out all the other episodes on the archives in the postwrestling.com server. And until next time, for Dylan, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone, and I'll see you on the next episode. And until then, see you later. Bye.
Sayonara.